Hey guys, welcome to this episode of the Training Feed. My name is Jacques Delagere. I'm here with my co-hosts Angel Sanchez
Hey,
and David Bravo.
What's up?
How are we feeling today?
good.
Good.
Bueno?
Chilling. Wearing a hat today because my hair is very long and out of control.
Let's see who grows the hair the longest right here. I haven't gone the barbers.
Bro, I got you beat already. Like it's not
wow,
even
I guess
even
you have.
close.
Angel, what about you?
Yeah, my hair is not that long. Not yet.
For our viewers, if you guys didn't see Angel back in December, he had like the sickest fade and print. We're gonna have to post it on our Instagram, but if our viewers didn't see it, that was a highlight, right, David? Do you remember that one?
Say that again.
Just saying how Angel had a sick cut back in December.
Oh, the prison cut.
Oh man. Well, we're excited for today's episode. We have a former TRX coach, Ranah Farkhondeh, and she's now based in Italy, in Florence, and she's opened her own spot. But she's someone I connected with whilst working with Equinox a few years back, and she moved out there during the pandemic. So I'm really excited to kind of get to know more about that journey and her whole training philosophy, really. But she's really interesting. So I'm glad you guys will be able to take the journey and listen to her path, really. So yeah, let's bring her on. Ranah, how you doing?
Hello.
Hi, Ranah.
Hey, you guys can hear me fine, yeah?
Yeah, we
Yep.
hear you pretty good.
Awesome.
How you feeling? You're live in your studio, right?
I am in my studio right now, see?
Like those wooden beams. That's so awesome.
Very Italian.
Very rustic.
Yeah, it's very Italian. So I know me and you connected through Equinox a number of years ago, but for our listeners, can you summarize a brief path for you into the fitness industry before we start thinking at some of the other cool details?
Yeah, of course. When was the last time we saw each other? Was it like that audition for
for at Project Equinox. Yeah, for a group. Yeah, so that was for teaching on the online platform, right?
Yeah,
I think, right, for group fitness.
Yeah,
Wow, that's been a minute. Wow, a long time ago.
it has. Yeah, I mean, so I never actually studied exercise science in university or anything like that. I was living in New York after college, and basically working out was like the only solace I had living a crazy life with a crazy entertainment job in New York City. And then I had gotten injured, started going to physical therapy, and I realized like how amazing the human body actually is. And I got really interested in like biomechanics from there on like a very like elementary level. And I was kind of tired of not that I was tired of it, but it wasn't really like my passion, my actual job. I was working in sports marketing for a really big talent agency called CAA. And I thought I would maybe teach group fitness classes on the side. So I got my personal training certification. First gig was at Equinox. I decided to just quit my job full time. And yeah, I started out at East 54th Street. I was a trainer there for, I think, a year and a half or so before going into the TRX program. I taught PGX for Playground Experience for Equinox. And then I ended up opening E by Equinox on the Upper East Side, which is like a bespoke Equinox gym.
Very bougie.
Yeah, very bougie, very expensive.
A friend of mine works there currently, and he always gives me his. He fucking hates it, but that's besides the point.
It's a cool spot. Very small, and their whole selling point is like a more 360-degree fitness experience. So people that did clients that did personal training also did Pilates, also did massage, and kind of all of the specialists and trainers that were on that person's team kind of filled each other in on that person's body. So yeah, I was a TRX coach, opened up that club, became a master instructor for Equinox during that time, which we basically teach the personal training curriculum to the trainers that come in. And then, right before the pandemic hit, I had come up with this idea for this group fitness class, Movement IQ. It had been a baby of mine, like a side project of mine for like a year. And I had been wanting to find a place to launch it. And Equinox actually let me do it specifically for E. So about like maybe 3 months before the pandemic, I actually had launched it at E. I think I taught about 3 classes, and then the pandemic hit, and that's kind of my background before I made it to Italy.
And what piggyback off? Remind me where you went to school again?
I went to the University of Michigan.
Michigan, right? And then are you based from the West Coast? Like originally is where you grew up?
Good question. Yeah, so I was born in Los Angeles, went to high school there, went to college in Michigan, and then I ended up in New York City actually because I thought I wanted to work in the music industry. Like that was what I really wanted to do. I think from age 17 to 22, 23, I was a big music head. And so in college, I had an internship at a music management company in Brooklyn, and I had just fallen in love with New York at the time. So when I graduated from Michigan, I'm like, oh, maybe I'll try to find a job in music in New York. So that's why I started working at that talent agency. And then I just kind of happened in the sports department, happened to end up there because it was actually sports marketing and my degree is in communication. So that's kind of how that worked out. I realized really quickly I don't want to work in the music business. It's very different being a music fan than actually working in the business. So
it's funny you say that. When my major was also a very big revelation that I didn't want to be in that field. So I hear you there. It's not, sometimes it's better that you find out in the major than too far along the road. But I did want to ask because I've obviously followed your right. Mutually follow each other on Instagram for a while, but I see you go to Florence, right? That's where you're based?
Yes.
Which I've never been to, but I've been to parts of Italy and I hear beautiful things. I see the views, I see your daily stories, the food, right? You love the food, you love the coffee, you love all the other good stuff about the Italian culture. And what was you started the Movement IQ. You tested out a couple of classes out at Equinox. But at East, sorry, but what was a driving force behind moving to Italy? Because not only did you, having gone across and having moved to another country a couple of times is really difficult. I've done that firsthand, and then doing it to a country where you're not so much fluent in the language and opening a company, that's just
pandemic.
And then add the fact that during a pandemic, I was like, God damn, she's doing this just so much that. I was like, Jesus Christ, she's got balls, because that is so ballsy to do that. So can you take us a little bit about, sorry, there's a multiple layered question, but
how I got to Italy basically is what
and just timing.
Yeah, I mean it's actually a pretty long story, so I'll sum it up as best like
Okay.
it honestly, a lot of it boils down to my ex-boyfriend, who was Tuscan. In 2019 I met an Italian boy, and we started dating long distance for about a year and a half. And I had come to Italy to visit him, and I fell in love with it. I loved being here. And then when the pandemic hit, as a lot of people did, I started kind of thinking about what I wanted, where I'm going to go, like what's going to happen, all this stuff. And I had this first and foremost, I kind of felt like it was time for me to move on from Equinox, if I'm being brutally honest. I mean, I learned so much there. It was I couldn't have asked for a better starting point. I'm so grateful for.
How long were you there for?
I was there from 2016 to 2020. So like 3.5 years. Yeah. And, I did a lot in those 3.5 years, from, working up the ranks, then teaching PGX and master instructor, launching this class, TRX, all this stuff. So I really got a good solid background. I really wanted to do my own thing, not because I just felt like I had this idea and this philosophy behind movement that I really wanted to grow and expand. And Equinox just didn't feel like the right place to bring that to like life. Also, New York City, I have to say, I love New York. I will forever love New York, but it's so concentrated with fitness that I felt like I couldn't really say what I wanted to say or like bring the principles of this class to life because it just kept getting lost in the clutter. You know what I mean? And I felt like I was also I've just always been more drawn to Europe. I have to say, I lived in Paris for a little bit and I studied abroad in London for a year. So Europe has always kind of been more like my vibe. So when the pandemic hit and I was kind of rethinking like, what am I going to do? I was like, you know what? I'm going to leave New York as a first step. And actually, while I was in New York, are you guys familiar with the company Barry's Boot Camp?
Yeah.
Yeah. So they had asked me to work for them a couple times. I've always been in close contact with them, and I've always been like, no, thank you. Like, I love your company. Like, right now is not the good time. Like, all this stuff going on with Equinox, et cetera, et cetera. Then when the pandemic hit and I was like thinking, I'm like, I kind of want to leave. Like, what do I want to do? And then like, I have this relationship. We've been separated for 9 months, all this stuff. I was like, wait a minute, Barry's Boot Camp has an outpost in Milan. Maybe I can go work for them in Milan. This way, at least I'll be in the same country as my ex-boyfriend. I'll have, you know, Italy, the fitness culture is more virgin there. Maybe it'll be like a cleaner slate for me to do that. So I decided to leave my apartment in New York. I got in touch with Barry's Boot Camp. They're like, yeah, as soon as you get to Milan, we'll set up your interview. So I decided to leave my apartment. The only problem is travel was closed. So there was no way I could get to Milan. So I had to go home to Los Angeles. I had to leave my apartment in New York because my lease was ending. Then I decided to go home in Los Angeles and kind of just wait it out until I could somehow from Los Angeles get myself to Milan. Finally, after moving to Los Angeles in June of 2020, in August, nothing was happening, nothing was opening. I was getting like really like stir crazy. Like I just left my entire apartment, like what just like left my job, like what's going on? And I found out that Croatia was letting Americans in. So then like the wheels started turning in my brain and I'm like, wait a minute. So does that mean if I go to Croatia and stay there for 2 weeks, I can then somehow hop into Italy?
Hit the train, yeah.
Yeah, so I did all my research. I called the consulates. No one really gave me a straight answer. I was like, well, I'm gonna try. So I didn't know if it was actually gonna work, but I took one of my friends with me to Croatia. We had like a 2 week, honestly, like a 2 week party there instead of a quarantine. And then it was time to get to Italy. I got a lot of questions like in customs. So I think I also had to stop in like Austria or something, but somehow I ended up getting through and I got into Florence, which is, so my ex-boyfriend is from San Casciano, which is a town in Tuscany, not too far away from Florence. So I stayed with him for a couple weeks before I went to Milan. And quite frankly, like in that period, I realized that me and my boyfriend weren't right for each other. So I was like, okay, I'm gonna go to Milan, I'll get this job, like we'll break up, it'll all be fine. Go to Milan, get the job. 2 days later, they reach out to me. They're like, we're so sorry. We can't bring you on because the second round of COVID had just like kind of shot up in Milan and everywhere. This was like, we're talking October, November of 2020, and we have to shut down again. So Barry's Boot Camp shut down all their locations, and they didn't open again for another 10 months. I was like, fuck, what am I gonna do? And at this point, it was like I had been on an emotional roller coaster because like I had left New York, waited, gotten through Croatia. I was also going through like some health issues at the time, some pretty big health scares. So I was just rattled. I was like, I don't even know what I want anymore, like what's going on. The relationship was so tumultuous at that point. I had no choice but to go back. So when I didn't, when Barry's Boot Camp shut down, my boyfriend was asking me to come back. I was like, okay, let me go back and let me at least like clean the slate. I get back to Florence and I ended up getting stuck in quarantine for about a month and a half in San Casciano. And during that time, I was just like reflecting a lot on like what I wanted. And I decided to just spend a weekend in Florence by myself, just because I needed the space, quite honestly. And I can't even describe it to you. It was like I had dreamt this dream, like this business in my sleep. I fell in love with Florence, and I also saw what a great opportunity there was here for a fitness studio, because there isn't actually that much fitness here, but there are so many expats, so many university kids, like, and I was like, I feel like I should open up a studio here. And it literally just happened like that. I got back to San Casciano. I told my boyfriend, he thought I was crazy. That night I started researching for lawyers to try to figure out how I can do it. Cause it's actually not very simple. You can't just like you can't just like move, and you have to, I had to pretend that I was entering to work as a life coach, because it's a less regulated activity. So I had to write a whole business proposal about like my life coaching practice and how I integrate Pilates, because Pilates is also not a highly regulated business. So that's kind of how everything kind of came about.
Wow.
It very kind of, it was like, you know how they say sometimes like the biggest doors open from like the lowest moments. That's kind of exactly what happened to me. I just like went with something that felt right in that moment, because everything else felt so wrong and like just scary, and like just not scary, but just like turbulent. This one little shining light was like, this seems like a cool place. Like, I feel like I could do this somehow. I just followed it. And
How long has it been since you guys opened?
I opened the studio 3 months ago, so in October. Yeah, it's been 3 months.
How's the turnout?
It's honestly, I'm so grateful. Like yesterday was sold out, today was sold out, tomorrow is sold out. Yeah, I've been so grateful. But also it's like, I kind of knew in my gut it was going to work. And I really, really, really put my heart and soul into it, honestly. Like, so yeah, that's
awesome.
Mm-hmm.
I have a question. You mentioned earlier about your training philosophies and principles and how we got kind of overshadowed by a lot of the clutter, especially here in New York. Can you tell us what your training philosophy is and how you use that with your classes? And how have you been telling your new clients that, especially in Italy, with language barriers, or or do you have to sort of word it a different way?
Yeah, well, it's a really good point you bring up. So like I said, fitness is so virgin here that it's almost like I don't even really have to like go above and beyond to try to like express the value. Like the value just kind of comes across from the experience. It's a lot of these people's first time ever really holding a weight, you know what I mean? So they don't really have a lot of prior experience. So I just get to do my thing, which is like awesome.
That's
Obviously like I explain things, and like, so this is me getting into like my whole training approach is, what I found so frustrating about group fitness classes in New York was, it was all about getting in a good sweat, or like, doing these crazy ballistic movements back to back really fast, and like all the stuff that, personal trainers usually like poo-poo on about group fitness. I agree with that. On the other hand, I also
telling me that when you sweat, that's like not an indicator of a good workout?
You're being sarcastic?
I am. I'm being very sarcastic. I'm joking.
Yeah. So, but anyway, like the thing is like good quality movement, it can actually be really challenging. And at that same token, like it really like bothered me how, people would go take classes for like fitness classes for like 3 years, and like their push-up would just look so terrible. And it's like, you look at that person, it's like, how does that even, you're not even like connected to your body. Like how, like you don't know what that could possibly feel like. It could feel so much more fluid and so much better. So this is where the Pilates principles kind of come into play. The movement IQ method is basically getting you to understand how to tap into your body's natural biomechanical blueprint for success, right? Like as personal trainers, we know so many things about biomechanics and like how the human body is like meant to move efficiently, and like movement can actually feel really good if everything stacks correctly, if like the sequencing of muscles firing like happens in the right order, all of those things. So the movement IQ method uses Pilates and functional strength training to kind of get you to understand how your body is actually meant to move through a squat, through a push-up, and all of those things. So yeah, that's it in a nutshell. I can go into like the depths of like the structure of the class and kind of how it all comes to life if you'd like to, but that's the gist.
How was it? How did people react to it when you first introduced it? Because you said you taught it for maybe 3 or 4 times at the club you were at.
Yeah. No, people actually really liked it. I got a lot of positive feedback. I will say it's different because, like, for example, like in the kind of traditional format, in every class we only focus on 2 to 3 major strength training exercises. So for instance, like I'll just take one sample format, like today is all about the squat and the push-up, right? So the class builds in a very strategic way. Like we start with breathing drills and like mobility drills that are catered to those. It's kind of like a personal training session, catered to those specific movements, right? Then you move into like a dynamic warm-up, and then you move into like your strength and Pilates pairs. So the strength exercise, this goblet squat, for instance, is paired with a Pilates exercise, that touches on the biomechanical nuances of the squat. So like, for instance, for a goblet squat, I would maybe use a Pilates Frogger as the complementary exercise, because what you're basically doing is lying down in a supine position with abdominal compression. Your legs are in abduction and you're kind of like pushing your legs out and pulling your legs in with a stable pelvis and a good rib to hip connection. And like, that's what a good goblet squat is, right? It's like a fluid goblet squat is when you're able to like maintain that rib to hip connection throughout the entire squat. The pelvic floor engages at the right time for you to power up the squat without any energy leaks. So it kind of complements each other in that way. And then I speak to it, right? Like when someone's doing the goblet squat, and I'll be like, I'll like use my words to make sure that their pelvis stays stable. And then the squat feels so much better and so much different than when you're just kind of like extending out of it, or like not grounding through your feet properly, or not creating tension properly with the handlebar, right? So that's kind of how it works in real time.
Nice. So you're trying to basically integrate Pilates and strength, which is I think in the fitness industry is something that a lot of people I think struggle with. I think understanding how Pilates can maybe translate into strength or vice versa. What's one of the biggest kind of like training myths that you find and you really want to like debunk when it comes to Pilates and strength?
Yeah, well, I think people just have the wrong idea of Pilates, honestly. Like, I think people think Pilates is all about just like torching your abs, or like a lot of like donkey kicks or like clamshells, right? But what Pilates fundamentally is like a focus on getting you to be in a neutral posture, right? And it's like, that's what a proper strength training exercise is, right? Like in a way, a squat, they're like all of your joints are centrated, there's a good connection between your upper abs and your lower abs. So you you like power out of the squat with good force transmission, right? And I think, and that comes from having a centered center. And that's what Pilates is all about. It's the art of controlled joint articulations via a very stable core. We talk about this training principle all the time: proximal stability lends to distal mobility. And it's so true with Pilates, right? Because everything you do from with your upper and lower extremities stems from your center. So that's really what Pilates is all about. It's not about like the muscular endurance of your abs or your glutes. It can be if you get an instructor that teaches it that way, but that's not what it fundamentally is.
Mm-hmm. Nice. Do you find that it's a lot easier, especially in Europe, in terms of what the fitness mentality is, to teach this? For example, do you have more people that are just like, yeah, sure, let's do this, or be like, well, I heard this with Pilates and I want to squat 500 pounds. Like, I don't want to do this. I just want to squat 500 pounds. Do you find it's a lot easier to, I guess, connect people to being open to the fact that you could use both?
To be honest, a little bit. Yeah. And like I said, I don't have to do a lot of work explaining myself, right? Because like a lot of these people are like are picking up weights for the first time. So it's not, they don't have that like ego in place of like, oh,
Yeah.
but I can use like a 36 kg kettlebell. No, like, so that's really, it really takes the pressure off me a bit.
That's kind of like the ideal client to some extent.
Yeah, no, it's really awesome. And granted, like, yeah, it's it does make it a lot easier. And again, I feel like I can just do me and just put out what I have to offer without having to be stressed out about you know, people's egos getting in the way. But the other reality is too, it's like you kind of have to find your niche and your ideal client.
Yeah.
Like, you're never going to appease everybody, right? And like a lot of people that walk through my door happen to be younger girls, either new to exercise, or ones that, you know, like maybe more slow, mindful movement, right? Like they're like they've done yoga before, or like they've taken a Pilates class here and there. So it's like very empowering for them to be able to like do that in a way that also helps them lift heavy weights.
Yeah.
So yeah,
That's great. Thank you.
So Ranah, I wanted to touch base on some business questions or business side of the equation.
Yeah.
Do you, like, being a solo business owner comes with a lot of pros and cons? What are some tips that you can give to other solo entrepreneurs on anything in general, and then more specifically time management, because I know that is a component that a lot of people struggle with.
Yeah, for sure. As far as time management, honestly, delegating as much as possible is so helpful, because like as a one-man show, you'll quickly realize it's not the big things that get in the way. It's like the little things, like making sure the floor is vacuumed on time, or like you realize like there's no more toilet paper in the studio, or like, you know, your accountant is like bugging you for all these invoices, or like you have messages that you have to respond to from like Instagram, email, the website. And it's like, it's those little things that like can just like add up and kind of make you crazy. So like for instance, I have someone that comes and just cleans the studio on a weekly basis. And it's like in the calendar. I don't have to even think about it. She just comes, right? And like that in and of itself is such a mental like release. And then what else? Yeah, I have someone that handles kind of like the not my social media content, but I guess the paid advertising aspect of it. So honestly, even though it's an investment, your time is so valuable as an entrepreneur. So like whatever you can do to delegate the stuff that doesn't need your creativity or your trainer brain, just do it. It's so worth it. Yeah, and then what the first question was is, oh yeah, the other thing I would recommend is like go into it just acting as if it's going to work out, because if you believe that truly, like you're going to find a way to make it work out. I think we can get so caught up in like the reasons why it shouldn't work, or it might not work, or the obstacles that might come about. But the reality is like, if you kind of just like set yourself up to like, I'm just going to make this work no matter what, like it will work out. For example, when I first moved here, I was like, let me see how it goes. Let me see how many clients I can get, and just like train out of their homes before I even like think about like opening up a space or whatever. Literally my third week that I was here, the agency that had helped me find my apartment, I just mentioned to them in passing, by the way, in like 6 months time, I maybe want to start looking for a studio space. Do you guys do commercial rentals too? And they're like, yeah. And then literally 3 weeks after I landed here, they called me and they're like, we have something that we think you should see. And I'm like, it's so early. I have like one client that I'm training out of their apartment. Like, this is okay. But like, I saw this space and I was like, it just felt right. And I was like, holy shit, I can't lose this space. And I'm like, fuck it, I'm going to make it work. So I literally just took the space and I just acted as if. And the other reality too is like, it takes time to get these things organized, right? Like just getting the lighting installed, the mirrors installed, the equipment ordered from different parts of the world. And it took a while. So I'm actually really happy I got it early, even though, yeah, again, it was an investment. I paid for 5 months of rent without any sort of like income on the space just to set it up. But like the thing is like if you act as if, and if you truly believe that it's going to work and you have put the passion behind it, like that money will come back around. I wasn't very, I have that kind of approach when it comes to money and investing. I'm not so like, I'm like, I just believe that it'll come back if I just keep putting my heart and soul into it. So that's another tip I have. Just believe and act as if it's going to work, because it will, like if you really go for it.
Yeah, and you brought up some good points there. Like it was something that I heard when people were talking about doing Airbnbs and hosting their own Airbnbs, where they said one of the biggest things that people mess up on is like trying to do everything themselves and not delegating correctly. So for example, the toilet paper analogy, where you're like saying like you got to make sure that the floor is vacuumed, you know, there's toilet paper in the bathroom, like things like that end up being like little small things that people mess up on that become bigger and bigger and bigger if they don't have a process. So I really like that you said that. And then the other thing was, you know, going back to like believing the process and believing that it's going to work out. People pick up on those positive vibes as well, right? Like if they're coming to your space for the first time and you're meeting them with like a smile and happy energy and good energy, they're definitely gonna adhere to the program and like listen to what you have to say, more so than if you're like frantic and about and just like trying to figure out how am I going to make rent? How is this going to, you know, do I have people around me who are going to complain about the sound or something like that, or like anything like that. So definitely having that positive approach, I believe, works as well. So good job on that front. What are some ways that you scaled your business to reach the most amount of people?
So yeah, to be honest, like scaling this business has not been where my head has been at all. Like I think, and I'll kind of explain why, but like I really like the idea of just like a very passion-filled mom and pop shop and just kind of seeing where it goes. And that's the other thing I realized with having a business too, right? There's only so much that you can plan ahead. Like you want to have like a general idea of where you want to go, but it's like you also have to be open to like the doors that kind of open along the way. Like I thought I was going to have a personal training space, and like I was just going to do personal training because that's like kind of what my that background was mostly in. And like movement IQ, I like wanted to bring it to life, but I was like, maybe it's not digestible enough, all this stuff. And then I saw this space and I'm like, but this space is like great for group fitness. Also, from a profit margin standpoint, like it's just the reality. Personal trainers in Italy make maybe like a third or a fourth of the income that they do in the States. So just from like a profit margin standpoint too, I was like, I think the only way I know it's true. I'm like, you think the only way I'm going to really make it work out is if I go the group fitness route too. So again, like having a general idea, but also kind of being adaptable and like the decisions you want to make or like the routes you take.
No, that's cool. And sometimes I feel like being in the city, that's another problem. Like you always have to like try to figure out this before that, and like trying to project as much as possible. Like it becomes a little bit of a mental block for a lot of people, where they're just like, they're so fixated on the next step and the other step that happens after that, and then the other step that happens after that, possibly because the rent is too damn high, that they just fail, right? Or they just get frustrated and they hit those blocks. So it's kind of cool that you made the jump, you went to an environment that you feel good in and you feel healthy and you feel well in, and you're creating a space and kind of organically feeding it positivity, you know, business, and promoting yourself naturally, and seeing where it goes. So that's really cool to see that kind of like, you know, facilitate itself. And those success stories are always awesome to hear and see, because they're motivating, right? People are going to listen to this and they're going to be inspired to do something like that on their own, hopefully. The last question I have is, if you were to go back to a commercial gym, hopefully you don't ever have to, what is something you would do differently?
To be honest, I'm not ever going to go back to a commercial gym. But that's a tough, like, I'll kind of like reframe the question a little bit. I think because I gotta be honest, like there were a lot of times where I was really bitter about like not really bitter, but I started getting really tired of the way things would go at Equinox, right? Like the volume is so high, like the output for each client, the expectations are so high, especially at the TRX level. Then with master instructor, I had to like keep my numbers high in order to keep that role. So it was just like so exhausting. But honestly, looking back on it, I'm like, you know what? I'm so grateful. Like that is so cool that I got to see so many different bodies do these go through these exercises, because it just built my awareness so much of like, you know, where different energy leaks can happen in the body and like how to properly cue people in and out of it. And you realize so quickly that, you know, the biggest problem is a lot of people just aren't like present in their bodies when they're working out. And that's like because they just have like, and that these little things that I noticed along the way, these patterns that I noticed just from seeing a shit ton of bodies throughout my time at Equinox, I was like, it's really what kind of sparked the my ability and also my desire to build this brand and build this method. So it's like I think don't take the little things for granted, I guess, when it comes to working in a big gym like that. Even if it's not going to be your final destination, like there's so much that it can give you that's just outside of the experience in and of itself.
Cool. That's awesome.
Mm-hmm.
I wanted to piggyback off one of the points you just mentioned about seeing in a corporate environment, seeing so much volume, seeing so many bodies.
Yeah.
I think some of us had brought up this is a little while ago in a previous discussion about if only there was a way, and maybe this is somewhat where your philosophy lies with movement IQ, but if there was a way of rewarding fewer volume, because you would then see if the inverse relationship of volume and quality, where if volume went down, the quality would surely go up. But it's I guess in a corporate environment, it's hard to either argue for that when I'm trying to think of the best way to say this. I think it's harder. I mean, I guess I'm just piggyback off that point and want to appreciate that. I think it's a very serious note, because when you are changing people's lives and they're not just a number and it's not just a body, and like you just mentioned as well, like when people aren't even present in their body, like how are they even supposed to connect with making a change, right? With, you know, if they are in New York City, as we all know, the temptations of eating out, drinking and partying, whatever it is. And then if they're not even going to be present with things that have to change in their habits and their routines, now how does something such simple as increasing a frequency, but it's just as you mentioned,
Foundation's not there. You're
right. And I just think it's hard. I know that the more you go up in any corporate level, the more you're expected to produce. And I ultimately think where I'm getting at with this is if the person isn't meeting you halfway, then it doesn't really matter how qualified you are. But it just makes me think of, you know, and I guess this is really where I'm getting at with your facility, is the quality being outweighing the quantity and prioritizing it. And I just wish it was a more common thing, but I guess it's just how the fitness industry, at least in New York City, looks like at this current time and place. And it's interesting you mentioned about the group fitness, because I'm actually starting to get my feet wet in that as well. And it's when programming, it's such a different form of programming, because if you were to work with someone one-on-one or a small group and you go, okay, you're doing this for a minute, or this superset, and the rest period is 90 seconds. When in group fitness, there really isn't much more rest than about a minute, maybe between rounds.
Yeah.
Imagine, right? It's at most maybe a minute and a half. And then that's even a long period of time, because it's a group of people, they're antsy. And I don't know if it's the New York crowd where they want to go to a fitness class and they want to get three things in one. They want to get the weights, the cardio, and the sweat in that hour. So if they didn't get it, they'll go somewhere else, or they'll go see another instructor. That's just, and you mentioned Barry's Bootcamp. I mean, they're all similar motto, where a New Yorker, I mean, now that COVID has changed the work from home style a little bit, perhaps there's some that skews things, but prior you think, okay, the New Yorker typically has an hour to get all those three things in, and maybe even 45 minutes for any time to get back to the office is a whole hour window. But is that kind of where that spiraled your transition to get away from the city and to go open your own place sort of thing?
A little bit, yeah. Definitely, I think that New Yorker mentality has. I joke to my class all the time because like in a New York fitness class, like once the lights go down for the stretch, there's already like a line of people like at the door to exit the door, right? So like
done, yeah.
Anytime I'm running like even 2 minutes late, I'll be like, guys, we're gonna finish at like 10:57. Is that okay? And everyone's like, what's wrong with you? I'm like, yeah, that's fine.
Oh, when you come into your class, yeah.
Yeah, there's just not the same kind of hustle. But also it's like, I think there is some, obviously to your point, like there is some value in getting people to like feel good after a workout, feel like they did something, get some endorphins running through their system. And that's kind of what I've had to play with my whole method, right? It's like, how do I ensure people are moving well, or at least building the capacity to move well class after class, but still kind of keep them moving. And that's why in the class, we focus on either one or two movement themes every class, or 2 or 3 principal strength training exercises. And everything is kind of built along the same patterns within that class. So it's like, even though they're doing a lot and there's a lot of repetition, they're kind of learning the same skill set in their body, like for like hip extension, right? Like maybe if I program a class where it's like kind of centered around hip extension and like the posterior chain, it's like a lot of pelvic tucks, different kinds of bridges. Like then I'll manipulate tempo in a lot of different ways, and in a deadlift, right? So it's like they're doing the same movement pattern, but it doesn't necessarily feel like they're doing the same thing, but they're still learning,
Masked in different ways of replicating the pattern, right?
Yeah, and the thing is like but the thing is like the intent isn't even to mask, it's for things to complement each other, right?
Right.
Like a pelvic tuck is such like people think of it as like, ooh, that's like a pregnancy exercise, like a Kegel. But the reality is like, it's actually, that is the very first point of effective hip extension, is being able to tuck your pelvis from like your pelvic floor. Like that is hip extension. And like, you'll see it when people deadlift, right? It's like that kind of hits a little bit late. Like it kind of just catches a little bit too late and they kind of extend from their back. But yeah, so it's like, that's kind of, that's what I have to say.
I know we want to respect your time. I did want to ask one final thing.
No,
did you guys have any other questions before?
No, I think we're good.
So I know you've been learning Italian. You've been familiar for a while, and I see your notes how you're becoming more and more fluent with it. Let me ask you this: when you're teaching, and you're teaching completely in Italian, correct?
So it depends on the class.
Yeah. Oh, okay.
Because a lot of times it's like like everybody in there is an expat. Sometimes everybody in there is Italian. On Thursday, every single person in the room was Italian, so the class was 100% Italian. So it just depends on the crowd.
Who the class is. Okay. So when you're teaching Italian, are you at the point where you're already thinking in Italian, you teach and you speak it, or are you thinking and translating in your head, like what point you at? Because I know that that's a really hard thing with languages, and I've grown up speaking French, but if someone asks me to teach a class in French, I'm struggling already. So
yeah, that's something I've had to be really patient with myself, because honestly, like I think one of the biggest not values, but I think one of the biggest most important characteristics of my class is that like my cueing is very specific. It's very descriptive. It kind of like tells its own story to get people to understand how their body is meant to move. And that was my biggest fear. I'm like, if this class is all about that, how the hell am I gonna do that in a different language?
Yeah,
but it's like,
so hard.
I've had to be really patient with myself. Like, yeah, like the first few classes I taught in 100% Italian, like I wasn't giving by any means the same cues. I was just trying to get people in and out of the exercises. But, you know, in Italiano, we say piano piano, like slowly, even slowly, like it kind of all clicked. And then this last class I taught on Thursday, it's like, was it Thursday? Maybe it was this past week. It did, like, I was like, I didn't even skip a beat, but it just took practice. It just takes diving in and like just the reps. They say that when
Just
you learn
keep
to
going,
hear
right?
the reps, right? So
You need to be okay with failing a little bit.
yeah, totally. Like, and yeah, for a perfectionist like me, that's always been really hard. Like, but I'm also like very open with my classmates. Like when I'm like, I'm trying out this new format today, I'm not sure about the timing. Sorry. Like I didn't have time to like time it beforehand. Yeah, I'm just really honest about it. And it's so nice. But people like real people, you know?
Yeah, they see for who you are. Ranah, we can't thank you enough. This has been awesome. I'm still very like impressed with the whole moving to a foreign country. And then even as you mentioned, finding a space, leasing a space, finding a lawyer. Like there's so much that goes into it. Insurance, right? You, as you mentioned, you're someone just moving to the country. There's so much for someone to do that locally, let alone abroad where they don't know the language. I know you mentioned you finally got like your ID or something recently as well, right?
Oh, my permesso di soggiorno. Yeah, it's basically like the card that says I can legally live here, let alone like thanks.
But those are things that like you don't.
It's your green card basically for Italy.
Yeah. The funny thing is like it's like you're saying all these big things now, but honestly, some of the hardest things were the little things here because Italy can be so tough. Like I remember, like just trying to get even like because I knew I wanted to fit 8 to 10 people in this space, and it's not a huge space. It's okay, but like just trying to find mats that could ship to Italy that I could fit 10 of them in this space. And then I'm like, oh wait, I don't have a lot of storage. Like I need to hang them on the wall. They need to have holes, but I can't find mats that size with holes. Like, let me find someone to put holes in the mat. That in and of itself was like a whole, it's like those little things that you don't think about when you're an entrepreneur that actually end up taking the most time. And then here in Italy, it's not like you can just Google like, hole make, you know, you have to like, I was like, I like just kept asking around. They're like, oh, try a drape person, try a shoe person, try this person. And it's like, you know, these are like little mom and pop shops that like sometimes you show up, they're just not even there because they just felt like taking a longer lunch. So it's like, that was honestly the hardest. Those are some of the hardest things. Like getting packages delivered here is impossible, because I remember I had a huge delivery from an equipment company here. It's called like, I don't even know how it's pronounced in here, Lachetosis or something like that. And it was like, it was basically 350 pounds of equipment. And this street that my studio is on, it's like a one-way street. And there's not a lot of room and even the sidewalks are like that. And then the guy dropped off. He's like, I have all your equipment. Are you ready? And I'm like, yeah. And then he drops off this huge wooden like sled with 350 pounds of wrapped equipment on it. And he's like, okay, see you later. And I'm like, fuck. And I'm like, this is like a small street. I have 90 seconds to like get all this unwrapped and like haul it into the studio because there's going to be a ton of cars coming in a second, like yelling at me.
Oh my God.
It's like those little things that like, honestly, when you're a startup business person, that cause the most stretch. And like, obviously it's worse in a little country, like country town, like Italy, especially in Florence, more on the countryside.
Little tiny roads
aren't systemized for like commercial, high tech commercial things. So yeah.
They're not ready for the Amazon workers to park the truck for an hour and to take their time taking out shipments. And oh my God. Seriously, we can't thank you enough. This has been awesome. I'm sure we'll get you on again in future. I can't believe it's only been 3 months. I feel like this whole journey of you like getting there is maybe a bit longer. That's why I felt it was longer that you've had it open.
No, yeah, I've lived here for a year now, but and I got the studio about 6 months ago, but it's been open for 3 months.
For 3 months, gotcha. That makes sense. For our listeners who want to know more about you and the company and the studio, do you want to plug in your website, your Instagram, anything else where they can reach you at?
Sure, thank you. So my website is movementiq.it. On Instagram, I'm rana.movementiq, and those are the best places to reach me, honestly. There's a contact box on my website. So
Cool. We'll hit you up when we're in Italy next.
yes, please do.
Take the show to the road.
Let's do it.
I've got a hex bar in place for like my special people. So
there we go. You got some kettlebells too, I think, right?
Yeah, I got kettlebells. I have a pull-up bar with different grips.
There we go.
Yeah.
So what else? You need anything else? That's it.
Yeah, it's it. It's truly it. Yeah.
Well, we can't thank you enough.
Thank
Really
you.
appreciate you taking the time. I know it's 8 p.m. over there. Well, almost 9 p.m. now, right?
Yeah, I know. It's
Oh
like
shit! Wow, I forgot.
That's okay. I don't have plans on this Friday night, so I'll.
So it worked out good.
All right.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you so much.
Ranah.
Take care.
Have a
Talk to you
good
soon.
weekend. Have a good night.
Bye, everyone. Bye. So yeah, a little time zone.
Mangiare. That's all I know.
You in the whole hour you didn't say any Italian, and you wait till after the call.
That's all I know. I don't know where to plug it in.
At
Where am I
the
gonna plug
beginning.
in eat?
Oh yeah, no, that was good. I don't know if Angel, had you ever met Ranah through TRX or?
No, never.
No,
met
so
her.
that's the first time.
I've seen her. I think when I was doing some curriculum stuff.
She
She said 2016 she was in Equinox.
Yeah, although I believe she said she only did 1 year before she got into TRX. I think she said. So that's
Yeah,
like
because I
quite
think
short.
when I started training it was 2015, late 2015, early 2016.
Yeah, that sounds about right.
So I think
So there you
me
go.
and her were in some classes together because I've recognized her before.
David was at the front desk chilling. But yeah, I'm so glad she got to join us. I can't imagine going to another country where you're not fluent at the opening facility. That is just, yeah. I hammer that point hard on the episode, obviously, but
Oh yeah,
I think it's hard to do in New York City. And you mentioned Angel, the rents are too damn high, but I don't know.
rents are too damn high.
Too damn high. But yeah, should we wrap this one up?
Yeah,
Let's wrap it up.
All right, thanks for listening, guys. We appreciate it.
We'll catch you in the next one.
Catch you on the flip side.
Peace.
Peace.